11,000 Americans were killed by gun violence in 2013 alone. 11,000.
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Ungar, and filling out the panel, Heather Hansen, Brad Herschel. In the wake of the church massacre last week in Charleston, South Carolina, the president took the opportunity to argue once again for stricter gun control measures. Here's more from Mr. Obama.
If Congress had passed some common sense gun safety reforms after Newtown, after a group of children had been gunned down in their own classroom, reforms that 90% of the American people supported, we wouldn't have prevented every act of violence, or even most. We don't know it would have prevented what happened in Charleston. No reform can guarantee the elimination of violence, but we might still have some more Americans with us.
And it's been par for the course. Whenever a high-profile shooting occurs, the president goes on a gun control push. Was he just playing politics? Let's bring in John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. You can also find him at crimeresearch.org. John, when you listen to that clip from Mark Maron's interview with the president over the weekend, let's hear it first before I ask you about it.
This doesn't happen with this kind of frequency in other countries. When Australia had a mass killing, I think it was in Tasmania about 25 years ago, it was just so shocking to the system. The entire country said, well, we're going to completely change our gun laws. And they did. And it hasn't happened since.
Pretty sure that studio was in his kitchen. But anyway, John, the president loves using Australia as an example for strong gun control, basically. Is he telling the whole story?
Well, I mean, there's so many false statements of what he's saying. First of all, if you just look around the world, you see plenty of countries that have fatality rates from mass public shootings at much higher rates than the United States. If you just look at Europe compared to the United States, we rank about 8th of the countries in Europe. And that doesn't include bombing deaths or other types of things which occur much more frequently in other countries. Bombing deaths in Russia alone are about twice the rate of mass public shooting deaths in the United States. But, you know, as far as Australia goes, yeah, they had one really bad thing. They had never had anything like that previously. If you compare Australia to New Zealand, for example, since then, New Zealand has had a bigger drop in mass public shootings after the Australian reforms, even though they had no change in their gun control laws at that time. You just don't pick one place. I could pick one state that hasn't had mass public shootings for a long period of time, too. You have to go and look at lots of places, and when you do, when you look at in the United States, for example, where we have essentially 51 different laboratories. Bill Landis and I at the University of Chicago looked at mass public shootings in the United States from 1977 through 1999. And the only type of gun control law of the 13 that we looked at that had any impact was the passage of right to carry laws.
John, it's Rick Ungar. I honestly, listening to what you're saying, I think both the president and you, frankly, are begging the point. The real question here is not to compare who's telling the truth about what countries have higher rates, what countries doesn't matter. It's not going to do us any good right here. My question to you is, keeping in mind the Second Amendment, there's no point in challenging it or making it a fuss. It is what it is. It's there. Is there anything you have learned that would suggest to you that there's something we can be doing that just might help?
Right. Well, I was kind of getting to that with regard to the concealed carry laws. If you look over time in the United States, with just 2 exceptions, every single one of the mass public shootings have taken place where general citizens aren't allowed to go and defend themselves. Time after time, these killers, including the Charleston one, leave evidence indicating that they picked their targets because people there were defenseless.
So your solution is more guns, maybe even in church, as opposed to finding a way to keep guns out of the hands of bad guys, if that's possible. More guns is the way.
Well, I'd love to keep guns out of the hands of bad guys. The problem is multiple-fold. One is these guys are planning these attacks long in advance. In the Charleston case, it was 6 months. That's relatively short compared to the planning time that most of these guys have. When, you know, Newtown case, he was planning for over 2 years before the attack there. When somebody's planning an attack that long in advance, it's very difficult to stop them from obtaining weapons. There are lots of different ways that they can go and kill people when people are intent on doing these types of crimes.
Yeah, we don't have to argue that point. I think you're absolutely right. But again, the question is, what do we do? And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying the only answer is to put more guns into more people's hands.
I think, I don't know if you have to increase the number of people who have guns, but I think you have to make it so that people are able to go and defend themselves. So, just look at...
People already are able to go defend themselves.
No, they can't in certain places. Look, the church, people weren't allowed to go and carry concealed handguns in there. You look at all these attackers like James Holmes. He picked the one movie theater that had posted signs banning permanent concealed handguns.
I understand, John. Let me just, because we have short time, quickly ask you this question. If you took a vote of the people in the church in Charleston today, the survivors, the members, do you think they'd vote to have guns in the church, or do you think they would continue to want to keep that a gun-free zone?
10 seconds, John.
I have no... I mean, I hope that they would change their mind on it, but I can't guarantee that they would.
Yeah, we'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. But good discussion, guys. Thanks so much. That was John Lott. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. John, thanks for joining us from Pennsylvania. We appreciate it.